Welcome back to another episode of Get Real with Kacey Kasem. It's the podcast that goes behind the scenes of the fantasy football industry through interviews with some of the best in the business. Erika Brown of the League Winners and Fantasy and Frames joins me for this episode. Just a heads up, this episode was recorded before the season started. Yeah, we're going to the vault for this one. In this episode, Erika and I chatted about college football being her first love, how she got started playing fantasy football, participating in the Queen's Classic and Scott Fishbowl live drafts, creative writing, college fantasy football, balancing life while putting out content, finding the fantasy football community, and a ton more. Make sure to follow Erika on X at America108. That's AMERIKA 108. You can follow me, Kacey Kasem, at the Kacey Kasem, and the podcast at GetReal_pod. You can find my content with Rotoballer, Optimist Fantasy, and Fantasy Six Pack. I'm also co-hosting the Thursday afternoon show with Nate Paulvote at Optimist Fantasy. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel to get notified. And check out SundayDreamersClub.com for some awesome fantasy football-inspired t-shirts and sweatshirts. This podcast is a proud member of the DAP Network. And now, here's my chat with Erika Brown on Get Real with Kacey Kasem. My recent venture with this whole thing, I always kick my dog out at the very beginning. That's become a thing on this podcast. He does like to snore and sigh, and I don't want people thinking that I'm bored while I'm doing this podcast. So he's gone, but we do have a guest here, which I'm excited. I'm excited about this guest. We have Erika Brown. And y'all might know her from all over the place because really she is all over the place. You probably see her on Twitter, but we'll talk about all of that and more. Erika, thank you so much for joining the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right. Well, we're just going to jump right into it because I'm sure people are listening to this to get to know you more. And let's just go back to in childhood and sports and your relationship with sports. Did you have a relationship with sports, and did you play? Did you watch? How was that?
So I didn't really play sports. And when I was really young, my family was super into football. I'm originally from Oklahoma, so there's no professional football team. So my family was really into college football. So that's kind of where my relationship with sports started, was college football. Pro, I did not get into at all until sometime after college or during college, when I would follow the Oklahoma State Cowboys into the pros and kind of see how they were doing. But other than that, I was anti-football as a kid. My family loved watching it, on Thanksgiving and all the holidays. And I would be the one outside playing and just avoiding the whole situation.
I kind of get that, though. I'm like, I was never paying attention to the Dallas Cowboys when they were winning Super Bowls. So I really wish that I would have, instead of avoiding the whole situation,
right,
just going to eat food.
And we missed like that whole good era because we weren't paying attention to it.
Right. And I kick myself every day for that, because we really don't know when the next time we're going to see that.
Right.
So it sucks. But yeah, so with growing up and as you got older, did you have any specific like dreams that you wanted to accomplish when you got older, like a job or something that you wanted to do when you got older?
I always loved to write as a kid. So I'm an introvert. I love reading. I love writing. I love being by myself. Too much socialization with other people makes me stress. And the reading and writing aspect of my life has been my downtime. So over the years, I've written short stories just on my own. Every November, I do something called NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month. So what you have to do is write 50,000 words within, the 30 days of November. And it just to kind of kickstart your creativity and to get a start on like a book of something. So when I went to college, I wanted to focus on, my passions. And I started out doing English, which there's not really a job market for an English degree. So 2 years in, I switched to journalism. And so I'm actually a multimedia journalism degree holder. It's not really being of use, but I do have that background.
Okay, that's pretty rad. Yeah, I like to talk to people about their college backgrounds, because I went to college, I got a degree, child learning and development, which I don't use. So it's really interesting to hear what people went to school for and kind of that college experience. What about like fantasy football? When did you discover fantasy football?
Honestly, it was probably watching the league. Somehow I got
Okay.
started watching the league and I was like, what is this? I've never heard of this. So I think it was like 2014, 2015, maybe, whenever I first started getting into fantasy. And it ended up just being like a home league with some friends, like a 12 or 14 team league, even on Yahoo. We had no idea what we were doing, drafting tight ends in the first round. But it was a blast for a few years that we had it.
The league. All right. Yes, yes, yes. Like the other night we were scrolling through TV and I was like, what can we watch? We decided to put the league on again. And I'm like, I thought this was funny when it came out, but it didn't age as well as you would want it to. I might sound like an old person here saying that didn't age very well.
So
It's very interesting.
we're actually rewatching it too because my wife has never seen it. So she knows nothing about fantasy football or football in general. And I was like, well, hey, let's watch the league and you can see kind of the gist of it. And it gets better as it goes along. Season
Right.
1 and 2 were not that good, but we're like in season 5 now. So it's a lot better than what we thought it would be.
What about that first fantasy football league that you were in? Do you remember anything about like the draft or just the process of learning before you went into it? How did you go about the whole draft and do you remember anything specific?
I know that it was a Yahoo platform, but we drafted live in person. We didn't have like a real draft board with stickers or anything. So I made like an actual poster board and wrote everyone's picks down, like all 14
Love
teams. Yeah, that's what I remember most. It was a blast, but
it.
never
Yeah,
doing that again.
I mean, yeah, that does seem like a lot more than just having to put a sticker on the board. I know people complain about having to put stickers on boards, but really having to write everything out would probably be a little hard. I wouldn't want. So, do you do live drafts now, or have you participated in any lately?
I just got Fishbowl and then the Queen's Classic. But other than that, I don't really have a true home league anymore. Mine kind of disbanded after I moved away from Chicago. And now being here in Dallas, I don't really have a home league. I do a couple of like live online drafts with some friends. So I would say semi live, half live.
Well, if anybody drops out of my home league around here, we try to do a live draft or at least kind of get as many people together as possible. So I might accidentally kick
Yeah.
some. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, if we go to 14 teams, I'll let you know. Uh, but like, yeah, speaking of league size and all that stuff, what are your favorite kinds of leagues, like setting, scoring, or just anything in particular that you like about certain fantasy football leagues?
So I discovered Dynasty in 2020. Didn't have anything to do. I was furloughed from work, watching too much TV. Really started to get into Dynasty and researching that. So I joined 3 Dynasty leagues that year. I decided to go all in and just push all my chips in. I was like, hey, let's do this. And since then, I have 7 Dynasties. And then 2 years ago, I started doing best balls. Because, I mean, the fun part of any kind of league is drafting.
100%.
Yeah. So I've been joining more and more best balls. Those are probably my favorite leagues now.
That's awesome. Yeah, best ball is one of those things that I like got into real quick and then like got out just as quick. So I need to dip my toes back in then. But okay, so fantasy football and just being a part of that, how did you discover like I could put out content for fantasy football? What was your whole approach to doing that?
So in 2020, that's when I was doing all my research and listening to more podcasts and everything. And I discovered the footballers. And I was like, oh, people actually do this stuff for a living. So then you kind of get into that community on Discord and on their app and everything. And then I discovered, the whole Twitter community soon after and just started following people, people putting out content and reading a lot of stuff. And I was like, oh, maybe with my degree and my passion, this is something I could do.
How did you just decide to go into it? Like, where did you start? Like, when people are listening to this podcast, a lot of people like to listen just to kind of get tips and tricks and learn how people first started out. So how did you go about first starting out?
So I'm actually a pretty new content creator. I think I've only been doing this a year and a half. And I saw a tweet from someone saying, hey, the league winners are looking for, a new writer. Just send your sample over here and we'll read it, check you out. So I did that and got in touch with Thomas over at the League Winners and sent him a couple of samples of writing. And he was like, hey, you're in. Like, we'd love to have you on the team. So I started there. I'm actually still doing there. And they've kind of moved away from fantasy. We're doing more college, but college football is where my true passion for writing
Yeah.
is.
The college football thing. So as a person who doesn't watch college football at all, it's so impressive to me to like find somebody that is so immersed in that world. And I know that with you, and I know I knew you prior to putting out content, and then just putting out content is just amazing that you're doing that and doing that so well. Beyond the compliments that I'm giving right now, let's help these listeners out though, you know. When you first started writing, did you find there was something that you wish you would have known about putting out content in the fantasy football space that you know now that probably would have made things easier, or just, you know, would have helped out a lot?
It's always good to surround yourself with a good team. So if there's negative people within your team, just leave. I was part of another team for college writing for a while, and the whole community there was just so negative all the time. So I had to leave. I had to remove myself from that space. And as soon as I did, like, I felt so much better. Like, it was so stressful meeting, you know, these arbitrary deadlines for free. You know, I wasn't a paid content creator. And you had all these deadlines to meet and specific things that they wanted. And it was all my way or the highway type of experience. And the best advice is to, you know, do your research. If you have a great team around you for wherever you're creating, you're going to have, you know, mentors and people that will help you do whatever you need. That's what I would suggest.
No, that is a million times what I would suggest, because like when I first started writing, yeah, I was able to do what I wanted. Like if you're not getting paid to do it, like you should be able, in my opinion at least, you should be able to pick your deadline and pick what you're writing about and all of that jazz. Like I don't know, if you're not getting paid to do it, if you're getting paid to do it, by all means tell me I need to write a waiver wire article or whatever, or tell me to write about something that I really don't care about, and that sucks, but you know, you got to do it sometimes. So
Exactly.
yeah. And when you write, do you have a specific thing that you really enjoy writing about, like a topic or a player or anything like that?
So I really enjoy college football. Like, yes, I love fantasy football, but my first love is college football. So for the league winners, I'm actually writing about Big 12 football, just all the Big 12 teams, and then also specifically Oklahoma State players. So if there's anything I could write about, it would be geared more towards the college side rather than the fantasy football side. But hey, college fantasy football is also a thing. So
Yes.
kind of the best of both worlds nowadays.
Yeah, let's kind of get into that, because the college fantasy football thing is like probably the thing that would get me to watch college is college fantasy football. But yeah, how have you seen the rise of college fantasy football, and what does it have to offer people that aren't playing it right now?
So I remember before Campus to Canton League started coming out, there was one year Yahoo actually did a college fantasy draft. Just one single year they did it. And I joined that, and you get to learn so many players, you know, because college has, you know, quadruple the amount of players that the NFL does. Just like there's so many things to learn, so many players, so many different divisions. And it's just a whole different ball game, honestly. Yeah, when Yahoo did that first fantasy league, that's what got me hooked. And then I started joining like a Campus to Canton league, which has been a blast. This is our second year doing that. And then now DraftKings even has, you know, college pick'ems and everything. Now that NIL is a thing in the world.
There's just so much. There's just so much there, because I know you do a lot, and that's really awesome. And you brought up having a wife, and I do too. And my wife's like, oh, okay, you cannot get in any more fantasy leagues. You can't do this. You can't do that. Don't watch college. No.
I know it takes up so you have, of course, Sundays for NFL, Mondays for NFL, you got Thursday for NFL, Friday for college and NFL, then all day Saturday for college. Like I have 2 days off basically, plus a full-time job.
Yeah.
So it's a lot if you really want to get into, you know, the whole football aspect. It's a lot.
Well, how do you juggle that then? Because I know when I first started out, I had no idea how to like balance my actual life with putting out content. So, how did you figure out how to kind of balance that?
Luckily, my job is pretty, lax on things. I work like 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. every day, Monday through Friday. So great hours. I have the afternoon to kind of do what I want, especially during like the summer and the winter. My job is very, very slow. So I kind of do content, while I'm at work if I get a chance to. But yeah, just balancing writing. My wife will watch football with me. She's not really into it. She'll go to Oklahoma State games. She's more into college than NFL. She apparently suddenly loves the Lions for some reason. I think because she watched Hard Knocks with me. So now she's in love with the Lions, but we'll watch, those games together every now and then.
That's awesome. Yeah, before this conversation, one of my friends was actually just talking to me about Hard Knocks and how much they like the Lions because of Hard Knocks. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I get it. I get it. It's maybe yeah. Okay, you're giving me ideas now. I might have to
Right.
sit down and have Sarah watch some Hard Knocks with me. Okay, so you write for multiple sites, or at least two, right?
Mm-hmm.
um when you're putting out content and everything, like how do you also go about making sure that you like hit deadlines, get things done correctly when you have all an actual 9 to 5 job or 6 to 2 job, and you're over here doing that? How do you balance being able to get that work done?
I mean, I just set goals and tasks for myself. I like to break things up. So if I know I have an article due on Friday, I'll do a little bit each day just because everything all at once overwhelms me. I am a researcher, so I love doing the research part of articles. And I feel like that takes the most time. So if I do all my research like in the beginning of the week and then sit down and do my actual writing later, the writing part comes easier to me than the research part.
I get
Yeah.
that. So, okay, so when you put out content and you have people reading your work and you have an audience that you're growing, how do you get more eyes on your work, or how do you make sure that the right people are seeing what content you have to provide?
Yeah, it's really just sharing. Twitter's a great place, but honestly, it's not where you get the views. A lot of views will come from Facebook groups. So just knowing those types of Facebook groups that you can join and share your content without getting kicked out or, demoted from it. And also Reddit. I'm not really on Reddit, but that's also a great place to share. Twitter, you think you get a lot of views on Twitter, but it's such a small fraction of
Yeah.
your overall audience.
I get that. I know when I first started out, I'm like, especially with the podcast, I was like, why is the podcast not growing? And it's like, because you're only marketing it towards Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
You're not trying to expand, because there's more fantasy people out there besides just like, I just got on Instagram, like literally just got on Instagram. And I'm like, there are so many accounts of people that I had no idea existed. It's
Mm-hmm.
crazy to me how many people are out there that put out content that I had no idea that existed. So, yeah.
Yeah, and now TikTok's a thing. So,
Yeah.
short form video, even YouTube and their short form video, both great places.
Oh, okay. I was just having this conversation. Why are things not growing? Maybe it's because I'm just on.
Yeah.
This is just a podcast, and I don't do anything else with it. Oh man. You learn so much doing this podcast. You would think I would have learned that in 120 whatever episodes, but it's okay. I'm getting there. I'm old. I'm trying to learn this new technology, SEO stuff, like this whole writing articles thing where the paragraph needs to be 2 sentences because people look
Hmm.
at it on their phone. Like, what have you found to be like some of the hardest things that you've had to overcome from like you're learning about this in college, and then now you're having to take it into this, we're in 2024 now and everything's on your mobile.
Yeah, everything's different from when I graduated college, over 10 years ago. Yeah, everything's going digital. Like no one cares about, print media anymore. And they want the facts quick. So I'm big into like bullet points, like let's just hit these. You have to know as a reader where your eyes are going to flow. So readers like pictures, they like lists, they like bullet points, they like bolded words. So all of these certain aspects in articles really help, because they're not going to read, 8 paragraphs of just text. So you had to break it up into shorter segments, easier to read segments.
That's so hard for me too.
Right.
Like I'm looking at it. Because I stopped writing for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm back in writing, and I'm like, how do I make these sentences shorter? How do I do this? How do I do that? This does not equate to a visual beauty right now
Mm-hmm.
when I'm looking at it on my cell phone. So
And I
yeah,
do a
breaking.
lot of like free time writing, just, fiction writing, stories and stuff. And that type of writing is completely different than journalistic writing.
Yeah, it is. And I don't think a lot of people like realize that until they get in it, that there's going to be so many different things. Like you're going to have to change how you do certain things when you're writing. And, I'm from the age where we had, 2 spaces between sentences and
Right.
all that other stuff. So yeah, you have to learn a lot as you go. What is something that you've learned as you've started putting out content, being relatively new, but still you've been in the industry for a while?
Mm-hmm.
What's something that you've learned over the years that's really been helpful for you?
I think it just putting yourself out there. You have to be able to be confident enough to market yourself. You can't just say, oh, I wrote this article and hope that someone reads it. You really have to share it and say, hey, get this out here, share it in the right group, share it to the right people. Like, you really have to market yourself in this industry. Otherwise, you're not going to get eyes on anything that you write.
That's true. It's very true. And like also, like reach out to your homies to help you out. Like there are people in this industry that are so helpful, and like anytime that I've needed advice on stuff, I know who to go to kind of like help me out with stuff. When you first started, were you a fan of somebody that you kind of like were looking at for their type of content, or were there people that you reached out to that kind of gave you some advice as you were going?
There wasn't anyone specific. I mainly just followed the footballers whenever I first, started writing and everything. Um, Actually, I found you through the footballers when you were writing for
Yeah.
them. So I was like, oh, hey, cool. Another woman who likes fantasy sports. So that was really cool to see as well. But other than that, you just make these connections over time, and, kind of meet who you need to meet and talk to. And there was no one I actually reached out to specifically for help.
I get that. Yeah, yeah. When I started writing, definitely I don't think I reached out to anybody because I was like, I'm gonna try to do this myself. But
Mhm.
podcasting was a whole different ballgame for me. I was like, yo, writing, I can have an editor do this stuff, but I'm putting out a podcast on my own. So I want to make sure that I know what
Mhm.
I'm doing. So definitely that. And bringing up the footballers, yeah, I mean, they are they're such an important part of this industry. I mean, they're some of the OGs. They've been out there. They show that like you can get this stuff done if you really put your mind to it and put your passion into it. And being able to write for them was so awesome. I sometimes I'm like, I wish I still did write for them, but I needed to take that little break.
Mhm.
But such great people, and to have those people that you could look to and see that you can do this in the industry, that's really awesome. And you work with awesome companies as well, awesome fantasy football brands as well. How is being a part of such awesome companies? I mean, like I've talked to people from both sets of those companies that you write for, and I'm like, these are awesome people. So what is the feeling like?
So I love my fantasy. I mean, I love both teams, but my fantasy and frames team, it really truly feels like a family. Like, we have group chats going on all the time. We, have our Discord and our Slack, literally chatting all the time. Everyone is so supportive over at Fantasy and Frames, and getting to meet them in person at the expo. That was amazing. We had such a fun time.
Yeah. Fantasy and frames, yeah, I think they are so underrated. I don't I mean, they're rated, but they're like I think they're underrated. I love Fantasy and frames, one of the first like brands that I like recognize. I mean, obviously you look at it and you're like, that's Fantasy and frames. You don't even
Mhm.
need to see, like, you just see the logo. It's just great. And so you brought up like meeting people in person. So let's talk about being able to do that. What has your experience been like meeting people from the fantasy community in person?
Yeah, so my first experience was the Scott Fishbowl Live last year. So the Dallas live event, yeah,
Shout out
Dallas
Dallas.
Dallas live event was so great. And then you meet people like, Jody Smith in person, Bob Harris in person. We had quite a few women that were
Yeah.
there at the Dallas live. There's just some big powerhouse names that were there, and you're kind of starstruck at first, but then you just start chatting and you're like, oh, these are, just real people just hanging out, all doing the same thing that we love. And it was a lot of fun.
It's so much fun. I love the Scott Fishbowl draft. It's very stressful for me since I run it. I know I want to kind of plug that because it's very important to me. I want the Dallas draft to just keep growing and being awesome. But yeah, it's awesome being able to meet you, all the women from Unwind that hung out this year. That was awesome. So shout out Dallas.
Yeah.
What up, D-Bro? Have to give him my shout out because I love that dude. But anyway, yeah. So the starting out with the Scott Fishbowl and doing that live, live drafts are so awesome. What is your favorite part of doing a live draft though? Because there's so much awesomeness that comes with live drafts, and I'm doing one this week and I'm so excited. But what is the best part of a live draft?
Honestly, I love the unexpected part of live drafts because you never know what's going to go on at a live draft. This year at Scott Fishbowl, I had the 9 spot, and CeeDee Lamb ended up falling to me at 9, which in any mock that I did, it never happened. There were 7 quarterbacks taken, and then CMC,
Yep.
So it's so unexpected. You never know what people are going to do.
I took Lamb at 2 in the Houston draft when I was down there, and I'm like, okay, I'd seen him go all over the place. It kind of hurts at the same time. I'm like, you know what, get your guy. So, we did what we had to do. That's awesome. And then the expo, because the expo is such an awesome event. What has your experience been like going to the expo?
So this was my first year going, and you hear all the stories from it. I kind of had FOMO last year, seeing everyone going. My birthday is right around there, so I wasn't able to go last year because we were celebrating my birthday in DC. But going to it this year, it's not what you expect. You go in thinking, oh, it's going to be, you're making connections and talking to people, and then there's an actual expo, there's going to be live drafts, but there's such a connection, just talking to people in person, all meeting everyone from all over the world, basically. It's completely different than what I expected, but I had so much fun. I was exhausted the entire weekend, had to take a couple naps, lots of late nights.
Happens. No, I totally get that. Yeah, the expo is such a blast. And I was just talking about that again. My friends decided to pop in early. So I was talking to them about the expo because they wanted to know how it was. And I was like, man, I missed the Friday night party. And that Friday night party is always my favorite part of the expo. So I was so mad, so sad. This was not my favorite expo. And that's the reason why, is because I didn't end up going to the Friday night party. So yeah,
you guys had a lot of
we had
mechanical issues.
We had some issues. We had some medical issues. We had somebody passing out, and it was a lot. But at least I had Kelly Singh there with me, so that was the bright side. But my dad's out there partying with all y'all, having a great time, and I'm like,
I know. I was drinking with your dad while I was there.
Man, that's gonna go to his head too. He thinks he's a celebrity now, and I thought I was, and now he's like, oh, it's this easy to be a celebrity, so
right,
whatever. But yeah, so besides the people, obviously the people are probably my favorite part of the expo, and I'm sure that's one of your big parts. But was there anything about the weekend that really stood out to you? Shout out Bob Lung, by the way. I wanted to do that. But is there anything that stood out from the weekend that you really enjoyed?
I really enjoyed the Queen's Classic draft. Just getting to be there with all of these awesome women and draft with all of you guys. It's probably my favorite live draft that I've done. Even if we were, hangry, ready for food by the end of it. But
I mean, let me just tell you, this year was so much better than the prior year because we got there an hour earlier than that, which you think, oh, it's just an hour. An hour is very important when you've been. I didn't even drink the night before because I was stuck. Chili's closed at 8 or whatever at the airport. So, but it was such a blast to be able to hang out with all of you and doing that draft. Like, do you feel confident about the draft that you had? Is your roster looking good, or how do you feel about that roster?
In the moment, I hated it, but looking back on it, I'm like, okay, this is pretty good. This is pretty decent.
All
I
right,
was
all
I was happy with it, especially going in like completely unprepared. Didn't have a laptop. Didn't have a list like a lot of the other girls.
Me either. Like, I was like, "Oops, I forgot my
Yep,
stuff."
same.
Well, we're just gonna go with it and hope for the best, and swerve around when Kelly's drafting all the tight ends. And
5 tight ends.
Hey everyone, Kacey Kasem here. I want to take a moment to tell you about Sunday Dreamers Club, my fantasy football inspired t-shirt store. If you're looking for unique, stylish, and comfortable apparel that showcases your love for fantasy football, look no further than sundaydreamersclub.com. Whether you're gearing up for the next big game, hosting a draft party, or just want to sport some awesome gear, Sunday Dreamers Club has got you covered. With a variety of designs and styles to choose from, there's something for every fantasy football fan out there. Your support means the world to me, and there are so many ways you can help me grow this new small business. Grab a shirt or two for yourself or as a gift for your fantasy football league mates, or you can spread the word to your friends and family. Every bit helps, and I truly appreciate your support. Thanks for listening, and now let's get back to the show. I've done it. It was a blast though. So like, yeah, being around that many people that are that obsessed with fantasy football, and being around so many people that have the same mindset as you. Like, fantasy football is legit. It's awesome. It's great. Like, what is the feeling of being around so many people that have that same ideology? I cannot speak today, but yes, you know what I mean.
Yeah, because no one in my real life does fantasy. I have
Right.
one single friend who does fantasy, and he's in a league with me. But other than that, no one does fantasy around me. None of my coworkers. My wife doesn't even watch football. So just being around so many people, and especially so many women who loved it. You know, at the Queen's Classic, we also did a unwind dinner on Friday night, which was great to see everyone. Like the unwind women, there were probably 20 to 25 women there, like specifically with the unwind, group and everything that Rachel put together. And it's just amazing to see.
No, I get it. It is so awesome. I wanted to go to that unwind dinner. I told Rachel, like, my flight's coming in late. Didn't know my flight was coming in that late, but it did come in late, so I couldn't make it to the unwind dinner. But like, I've been to some of the unwind chats and been able to talk to so many women in this space. It's just great. It blows my mind, because when I first started, like, there were like 4 people that were women that were actually putting out fantasy content, and it's like, and then like 3 of them quit doing it, and you're like, what is
Right.
happening? So like, it's great to see this. And I also, I'll admit that I was one of those people that hated talking about being a woman in this space when I first started, because I'm like, I mean, I wasn't interacting with those people that were being jerks to me for being a woman in this space. But once you get a taste of that, like, I moved on to Facebook for a little bit and got a taste of that. But being a woman in the space, have you had to deal with your share of people being like that, or have you been fortunate enough to not have to deal with like trolls and all that stuff? And if you have had to deal with that, how have you gone about dealing with that?
Yeah, luckily I haven't had any of that issue. I mean, I'm still, pretty small crumbs out there in the Twitter sphere and everything. But it's so hard as a woman, because you want to be seen as an equal, but
Right.
also you're like, I do have a different type of, I guess,
How do I know
responsibility,
what,
I
yeah, I was about to
guess.
say, how do I
Yeah.
know what you're saying without
Yeah.
actually knowing what you're saying?
Yeah. You
Like,
feel like you have more responsibility to know what you're talking about,
right.
which
Yeah.
it's you.
It,
I don't like that aspect, because you feel like there's more pressure on you as a
that
woman.
gives you a lot more imposter syndrome
Hmm.
when something like that happens. And I get that. And like, I'm always thinking like, how do I make this like, so people can read it and like the average person can read what I'm writing, but also not sound like I'm a complete fraud, right? Like,
Exactly.
I do know about football. I do watch football. Like, I can name things for you, and
Hmm.
maybe I don't want to have to work extra hard just to like be that person who has, I just don't want to have to do that. But
Exactly.
I feel you. Like, that is a thing. That is definitely a thing. And, you know, you didn't get to see it, but prior fantasy football expos had women's panels where we would go out and talk about being women in the industry and everything. And you really haven't had to deal with all of that. Thank goodness you haven't had to deal with the jerks and stuff. But if you were to have to deal with somebody like that, I mean, I'm with the camp of just like, I just ignore it. I just mute it. I just do all that. But how would you go about dealing with people that are kind of coming at you?
I mean, I'm the same way. I don't deal with confrontation very well at all. So it would probably just be an instant block, like not even deem a response to anything like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I used to be the person, and I'm sure because my sisters called me out on this, but like at the beginning of these podcasts, I was like, oh, I just engage with them. I love to like mess around with people and like, you know, really get people riled up and tell them, but it's really not worth my time. Like you could be doing so many other things besides responding
Exactly.
to somebody that has no idea how to be an actual human being. So just be nice, guys. That's part of fantasy football too, is being nice. And the charity aspect is so important, and bringing up Scott Fishbowl and doing the live drafts and all that stuff. Like, how long have you been a part of that awesome experience?
So my first Scott Fishbowl was 12. Yes. So 12 is the first one I got in. I tried to get in 11, didn't make it in. But I got into 12. I was in the Vienna League. That was when they did all the cities. So I did that. And then 13 and 14, I did them both live.
Yeah, and the live draft aspect has been so awesome to the Scott Fishbowl. Like being like the year prior to Dallas actually getting a draft, it was the city's draft. So I ended up drafting in Frisco, and I was like in the Frisco draft, not in actual Frisco, but it was the closest to McKinney. So I'm like, sure, whatever. And when they were like, we're looking for Dallas people to do Dallas, you know, I was like, obviously, like, hello, like live drafts are amazing and all that stuff. So yeah,
I'm so glad they expanded all the lives. Like there's so many lives going on now.
there are. And for those of you that are listening that are like, you don't know what Scott Fishbowl is, you need to go to scottfishbowl.com and type in, you know, whatever. Just go look at all the cool stuff. It'll show you all the people that won in the past and how many people have been in. It's just growing and growing and growing. I've been in it forever. I can't even count. It's double digits now. It's just been such a great time. And for them to expand it is so awesome. So I've had people reach out to me and say, how do I get a Scott Fishbowl in my town? Well, find a big city close to you. Tell Scott Fish there's a lot of interest. Get people to tell Scott Fish there's a lot of interest. Let's go. Let's do this. The live drafts are the best part. Let's go. But besides the best part being the live draft, people, charity, and all of that also comes into play. What are some of your favorite things about being a part of the Fish Bowl?
Yeah, so I love the charity aspect. I think every year I've bought several shirts. I've bought shirts. I've bought glasses. I've donated via the silent auction that we have at the drafts. Yeah, I just try to support it in any way. Lately, my fantasy leagues are mainly charity leagues. Anytime I do a redraft leagues, it's usually charity. So like I'm in the Rainbow Bowl, I'm in the Battle of the Sexes charity league. It's so much easier having it be a charity league. There's no pressure. You're donating to a great cause.
Yep.
And like you're meeting some awesome people that also want to support that great cause.
And I've learned if you tell your spouse you're in a charity league, they're not as mad at you for being in a million leagues because they're like, oh, but you're doing it for a good cause. See, so
like, yes, it costs money, but it's going to charity.
It's going to charity. It's not like I'm over here just losing money to lose money.
Exactly.
So yeah, I don't feel too bad about losing money when it's for charity. So it's totally. Do you ever think you're going to win the Scott Fish Bowl?
Probably not. I did make it to the top, 500 last year, which I was super excited about.
Yeah.
There were 3 of us in our division that made it pretty far in the Whataburger division. I was happy with that since my first year in Scott Fish did not go well at all, missed playoffs completely. So I was very happy with it.
That seems to be a common thing is when people start playing fantasy football, they're always like, I won my first league, but also they're like, I did so horrible in the Scott Fish Bowl. It was yeah, because I'm the same way. I'm like, yeah, I won my first fantasy football league, but it happens. And the Scott Fishbowl, and the fact that he changes the settings and has so many different rules and all that stuff. Like when you play in leagues that are a little different than your normal cut and paste job, how do you go about like researching for that? Do you go into it researching, or what is your strategic plan?
It depends on what the bowl is, or what the league actually is. Most of the times, I'll just go off of the ADP according to the settings in each league. Kind of cheat that way, but I did Renee's Freak Bowl recently, which that scoring setting is different than anything I've ever seen. So there was no way to research that. It was a 2-minute clock, and yeah, I just went off of ADP and drafted all the running backs, and we'll see how that one works out. It's a best ball league, so.
Okay. Well, yeah, with best ball, it's a little like, okay, I can try this strategy and hope it works. I'm in a keeper league right now, and I was like, I'm going to go quarterback early, and I'm just going to get all these running backs, and everybody's like drafting, because it's tight end premium. So there's so many different rules. There's so many different scoring. I'm like, I'm just going to try this and hope it works. So when you go into drafts, though, do you go in with specific strategies in general, or are you just kind of like one of those people that not just ADP, but like, do you go with your gut, or how do you evaluate two players that are like very similar to you?
I go on vibes.
Okay.
I am a vibes drafter. If they did, pretty decent last year and they have a good, if we think they're going to do good this year, I'll just be like, okay, yeah, that'll work. I do have a keeper draft on Saturday that I do need some research because it's also an IDP league, which I know nothing about IDP. So this is my year in this keeper league, and I never know what I'm doing. So that one I will have to do some research.
Well, IDP. I was actually talking because I booked way too many podcast guests this week. So I've been talking all kinds of stuff with all kinds of people. And IDP is one of the things that I've been talking to people about and how much they enjoy IDP. How long have you been into the IDP game?
This is just my second year. I've only done a couple of leagues with IDP. Have no idea. I still don't really understand. I don't know how this guy's going to get more points than this position on defense. And I really do need to do some research. Over at Fantasy and Frames, we're known for IDP. So
there you go.
I need to go on our site and do some research.
Exactly. I was going to ask you that, but you kind of just took control of that yourself. Yes, go over there and check that out, because IDP, I played in one league. I think I ended up dropping that league like an a-hole. Because I was like, IDP is not my jam, but like maybe if I gave it a little bit more of a try, then maybe it would have been my jam. But it's good to see people expanding on this stuff, because like just a while ago, dynasty wasn't that big of a thing, and now dynasty is getting bigger and bigger. I feel like IDP is going to be that way too.
Mm-hmm.
When I was talking, I think it was Ronnie who I was talking to, let's hope, about IDP, like the IDP guys, not just the IDP guy site, but IDP people in general, they kind of felt like the outcast for a while. Like nobody, there wasn't a lot of content, and it's starting to come out. So like you said, go check it out over at Fantasy and Frames. We'll give them a nice shout out because they deserve it. So good friends of the show, go check that out. What about like when you write articles? Because I had somebody actually the other day ask me something about editing. When people edit your stuff, when you're giving them the stuff and they give you feedback, how do you take that feedback? Because that person I was talking to kind of felt like, I'm not good at what I'm doing, I'm trying, and this, that, and the other. But when you get advice from your editors, how do you take that feedback?
So in college, I actually wrote for our school newspaper. So I'm kind of used to that feedback already. I always see feedback as positive, because they want you to be better.
Right.
They don't want to say, hey, you suck at this, you should give this up. Your editors want you to have the best product on their site. Mm-hmm. So you are writing for them. And I take it with a grain of salt, because sometimes, they want to say something a different way than I said it. But, that's tit for tat. But right. Yeah, anytime, I think all feedback is good feedback, good or bad.
Right.
You just can't be sensitive about it.
Right. I get sensitive about it during certain times of the month, but other times of the month I'm good. And
Right.
like, but when I get that feedback, yeah, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, when I first started out, oh my gosh, this is a lot. Like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to change my whole way of thinking. It
Mhm.
really wasn't that bad. And I actually go back to those first notes that I was getting. I'll search for it and go back and read because I know that that's something that I probably am going to screw up a lot.
Mhm.
If you're giving me feedback on it at the beginning, it's probably gonna be something that I continue to do just
Yep.
because it's habit. So, oh, I totally get that, and I think that that's important to know that the editors are just trying to help you out. So that's great that you brought that up, that they want you to be the best that you can be.
Mhm.
So it's very important. But also important is like the NFL, obviously. I mean, we've been talking about college. Let's go back to college first because college is interesting to me. I'm getting a little, I'm getting a little off track, but I love college, not at all, right? But as a person who's been a person who wants to get into college football, like, what do you think is the best way for somebody like my age who hasn't watched college football? What's the best way for me to get into college football?
I mean, if you pick a team, just pick a team and follow that team first.
Okay, my college had
Um,
no football team, so I can't do that. So, chess team, yes, no
then
football team.
then take a Twitter poll and ask who should be your college team.
Okay.
So I went to Oklahoma State, started watching specifically Oklahoma State, didn't really care much about any other college. And then once it comes closer to like playoff season, you want to see, oh, who are the teams that we could be playing in the playoffs? Let me check them out too. Let me see how good they are. And so it just starts a snowball. So you
Yeah,
watch one team and then you start watching your whole division. So I watch a lot of Big 12 just because I want to see who we could be playing in the championship.
the draft intrigues me so much, and as a person that doesn't watch college football, it's insane to me how, like, it intrigues me so much, right? So, how are you during draft season? Like, what is when you watch the draft and everything, what's that environment like for you?
I love it. I always, have to root for my Oklahoma State guys, but also doing some C2C leagues. You see the players that are on your league in these campus to Canton leagues. And you're like, oh, I know that guy. I remember him. He's on my team. That's cool. He's going to, Washington now. And it's cool to see these unknown players kind of get their shot.
Yeah. That it is, and, like, I'm always watching it and being like, "Oh, that guy's suit looks cool," because 'cause they'll have me on draft streams, and I'm like, "Dude, I don't know anything about college football," which whatever, but, like, I mean, based on all the research I do and reading articles like you would provide and others, you kinda get a feel for who's good and who's not gonna be so great for fantasy purposes, and this is an evergreen show, but is there a player from college, like, maybe he's been in the league for a while, maybe, he's relatively new, but somebody that you watched in college that you were like, "I'm so proud of what they have accomplished."
So one of the guys when I was in school was Chris Carson for Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah,
And,
buddy.
seventh round draft pick. He wasn't expected to do anything. Had a great career with the Seahawks, unfortunate injuries, but he was amazing to see in person. Like such a fun player to watch. Um, During my time, Mason Rudolph was also our quarterback. Zach Robinson, who's now the OC over at the Chargers or wherever he is now. Yeah, we've just had some really great players that ended up going to the NFL. Right now, for defense, I love watching Malcolm Rodriguez over on the Lions. So he's one of our guys that I still enjoy watching.
That's aw and to be able to see these guys coming from college to where they are in the pros now, like, that's gotta be a little, like, heartwarming, I get that, and, like,
Mhm.
to see these guys grow and do all that, and I tried to have a couple of players a few years ago that I was like, "I'm gonna follow them through college and see," and
Mhm.
then I kinda, like, fell off because I am such a horrible human being, but
It's
they weren't doing what they needed to do, so I was like, "I'm just gonna stop."
it's also nice that, Oklahoma State is a smaller school. It's not like Alabama where we have, 50
Oh
something
god.
guys drafted every year. With Oklahoma State, we maybe have 7. So you can follow their careers into the pros a lot easier than, these bigger schools.
Okay, let's just kind of move on to like misconceptions about fantasy football. Is there anything that you think like the average Joe who doesn't know much about fantasy football, like a misconception that they may have about like how fantasy football really is? I don't know. I just came up with that off the top of my head, so you can just totally say that I'm good with that one. It's cool.
Not sure. I just know that my wife, she joined the Battle of the Sexes Best Ball League with me this year because
Okay, yeah.
I kind of
Shout out.
bullied her into it. Um, so we did a lot of research for her because she didn't even want to make her first draft pick. She was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know who these players are. I don't even know the position of anything like as a first timer.
Right.
So once she actually started doing it, she's like, oh, this is actually easier. I don't need to know all of these players. I don't need to know every single stat. And especially, on these apps nowadays, Sleeper's fantastic with giving you, quick player news, ADP, how many points they can score throughout the season. And I told her just research that way. Just make it simple for yourself.
Yeah. I'm not going to lie. I totally will be like, is there something that I don't know about this player? Why has his ADP, like, why is he but why is he still on the board? And so I'll click on it to make sure there's no news that he like got injured or something. And then I'm like, okay. So yeah,
Exactly.
having that technology and having that there at your fingertips is really awesome. I talk to people on this show who are like, well, back in the day we had to rely on the newspaper and do all of that. And like, I can't even imagine like, can you imagine having to do
No,
that kind of stuff?
no, would not want
Like,
to.
really?
I talked to my uncle recently who's been doing his fantasy league since 1991,
Wow.
and they are still going. They've been going so long where they've had like 3 of their members pass on, and now 3 of their kids are now in the league to replace them. Like,
That is so cool though.
and he was telling me like all their rules and how, everything used to be handwritten. They do a live draft in Vegas every year. And I was like, that's impressive. I would not have done that back in 1991.
Yeah, I don't maybe that's why I never got involved in it. Like these people are talking about how they did it as kids. I was like, I don't think my parents were like wanting to do that kind of stuff. They're like,
No.
wow, let's be chill hippies. So, okay, what do you like to do in your free time? I like to talk about free time on here because people say they don't have it, but I'm sure you have a little bit. What do you like to do in your free time?
I'm a big reader. So I like to do a lot of reading, read a lot of romance, a lot of queer fantasy books, kind of all genres. I'm big into beer. So I will hit up any brewery anytime. And there's so many breweries around DFW lately. So just go travel all the breweries.
Have you found a beer that you're like really about right now? What's your favorite beer right now?
I really like Manhattan Project. They have a double hazy IPA called Half-Life, and it's right down the street from where I work. So I can just hop in over there after work and grab a beer, and
That works
one of
out.
my favorites. Yeah.
That's dope. Yeah. I wish I liked beer so much. And I have seen that beer and I've seen it making its rotation in parties and everything when I go. So I get it. Local brewery. Shout out, shout out. But yeah. So what about like if you were to have to, not even have to, if you were to get to write about something besides fantasy football, what would you think that you'd be writing about?
I mean, I kind of already do it, but college. I mean, I honestly,
There
I
you
would
go.
love to focus solely on college. I do
That's
love
dope.
fantasy, but college, just player news, player updates, team updates,
I love that.
like all of that basic stuff for college.
And I love that. Like, yeah, I think that's awesome. And like fantasy football is like a nice stepping stone into getting into that and like really pursuing that. That's awesome. There needs to be more college because people like me who don't watch
Mhm.
college need that information, you know? So
And eventually, fantasy football needs that college information,
yeah, they're gonna
you know.
need it. And
Mhm.
then having more and more of that out there is awesome. And having something that you're passionate about, that you actually want to put content out about, that's like the cherry on top. It's
Mhm.
great. I love it. What about like when you are growing as a content creator, how do you plan to grow as a content creator? What kind of things do you want to do in the future?
Definitely want to do some more podcasting, some more video content. When I was in college, my focus was on broadcasting and video. So I have a lot of video background, a lot of editing background, and I love the video aspect. So I would love to do, jump on people's shows, edit some videos for people, maybe do more behind the scenes stuff as well.
Yeah, that behind the scenes stuff I think doesn't get like kudos enough. Like not, I'm giving them 2 thumbs up because there's so much stuff that goes like that's one of the reasons I haven't put out video. That's one of the reasons I haven't done a lot of stuff is because I don't know how to do it and I need to just try to figure it out. But
Mhm.
there's so many awesome people out there and to be able to know so many different things. Like that comes in key when you want to make it in most industries, like being able to be multifaceted. So
Mhm.
it's excellent to see. What about like in the NFL right now? Do you have any players that like you're just really fond of, whether it's for how they play or just who they are as people?
I'm super excited for Rome for the Chicago Bears. I love Dallas. They were my team growing up as a kid, in Oklahoma. But I moved to Chicago for 7 years and kind of adopted the Bears as my secondary team. That was during the Cutler era.
Yeah, Cutler,
So,
I'm smoking chair, baby. I love you.
so to see Chicago have this kind of resurgence,
Yeah.
and of course Caleb Williams, but I really, really like Rome. I'm excited to see him.
That is exciting and like I know this is evergreen, but again, I don't care because I think this is interesting and we can always come back and listen to this and be like, Erica was right, Casey was right, or Erica was wrong, Casey was wrong. But there's so many wide receiver options there now. Like, how do you see Rome fitting into that whole offense?
I don't think he's going to be, the go-to this year, but he's a rookie with Caleb. So I think they're going to have that connection anyway. It's going to be, like the Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase type of connection. Um, I think he's going to be good, once Keenan Allen retires, which could be sooner rather than later. Who knows?
Oh,
But
man.
yeah, I think Rome's going to be good.
Okay. I'm trying to like temper my expectations on everything because I'm like, okay, I traded in my dynasty league before the whole draft. I was like, I want Keenan Allen. I probably traded way too much to get Keenan Allen, and then they drafted Rome, and I was like, oh my gosh, now I'm really screwed. So I want him to do good things, but let me have my Keenan Allen 1 year. Just let me have that one
Yeah,
year.
Rome's going to be great for Dynasty. Maybe not for
Yeah.
redraft this year.
Maybe not for redraft, but yeah, dynasty, definitely keep him in mind. Okay, Erica. Well, I hate this. I always say it, but I mean it because I hate ending the show. It's my least favorite part of this whole ordeal. I do get nervous before I get on a podcast, but this is my least favorite part because you have to say goodbye to somebody that you just spent an hour with. So I enjoyed the conversation that we had, and there's so much that I learned, and you're just an awesome human being. I'm glad I got to meet
Thank
you
you.
in person and been able to like draft with you and do all of that. It's been awesome. But just go ahead one more time and let everybody know where they can follow you, where they can find all your stuff.
Yeah, so I'm America108 over on Twitter, America with a K. And all of my content is over on theleaguewinners.com as well as fantasyandframes.com.
I mean, there you go. But really, definitely go check out Erica and check out all of her stuff and the college football stuff, primo stuff. Go check it out. Support her and let her know that you listen to this podcast because, getting to know people is very awesome, and getting to get a little bit of tips and behind the scenes stuff, always, always appreciated. So, all right, come back next week, guys and gals and everyone. Please come back for another episode of Get Real with Kacey Kasem, and remember to stay rad.
Get real. Time to get real, everybody.